Hey folks, thanks for checking out Reigniting Liberty. I'm Deneen Borelli and Dr. Tom Borelli is in the house bringing you the truth in black and white. So folks, after a very disappointing 2022 midterm election for Republicans, there is a lot of finger pointing going on everywhere. Well, in today's episode of Reigniting Liberty, we're going to deliver the truth in black and white on the way the media played a huge role for Democrats. The results of the midterm election shows once again the media really are the enemy of the people. Our system of government depends on an educated voter. Well, Thomas Jefferson once said, and I quote, "An educated citizenry is a vital requisite for our survival as a free people." Well, our country, folks, is in deep trouble because way too many voters are totally uninformed because the media, they're just not doing their job. Instead of covering news that is vital for Americans, vital for voters in an unbiased and accurate way, too many media outlets are playing an advocacy role for Democrats. It's propagandists, in fact, Dr. Tom.
No, Deneen, that's absolutely right. The media is taking sides. And in this episode, in Reigniting Liberty, we're going to expose how the media manipulated the news to advance the Democrats. It's really as simple as that. It's a form of election interference. The media interfered with the election with the way they twist the news and the way they decide on what news to report on. This is what they have done. And they've been doing this for a little while, but let's look into some little history because I think that's important to bring some context to what we're dealing with today. So let's start with President Joe Biden. In 1987, Biden withdrew himself from the 1988 presidential election because the media caught him cheating. That's right, the media. Full stop. The media reported on Biden and they caught him cheating in the past. They got him on plagiarism on more than one occasion, more than one. Amazingly, the New York Times, that's right, the New York Times reported on Biden's plagiarism. One instance was a speech where Biden lifted lines from a British Labour official. He lifted lines from the man's speech. Biden also lifted lines from a speech from Bobby Kennedy. So instead of writing his own material, he lifted speeches from others. But that's not all. The New York Times also, again, the New York Times also.
Did you read that right?
I know. Was caught plagiarizing, Biden was caught plagiarizing a law review article when he was in law school. Then the law school initiated an investigation, amazing. And what happened was they found that Biden took 5 pages from a published law review article and took it as his own and put it in his own law review article.
5 pages. Wow.
5, no, not a paragraph, not a sentence, not a word. 5 pages. 5.
That's not an oops. That's a
No,
what?
no, that's not a lift. That's a hijack.
Wow.
Hijack, right? So this is part of his history. Also, Newsweek found video of Biden on C-SPAN where he was exaggerating his academic record. Imagine that. Biden said he was graduated at the top of the class because he's Joe Biden, top of the class. Well, it turns out he ranked 76th out of 85. That's not top of the class.
Not even close.
But that's what Biden said at the time, right? But he got caught. He got caught by the media. And because of that, he dropped out of the presidential race in 1987 on September 24th of that year.
Wow, that's I wonder how many people know about that. I mean, we've gone through this research numerous times. We were very familiar with this, but
Right.
the 5 pages thing, that's new to me, Dr. Tom.
That's why we call him a fraud. He's been a fraud
Yeah.
his entire career,
Yes, he
going back to
has.
law school. But the media covered it back
Indeed.
then. That's the important point. Now, not so much.
Not so much. Yeah. Where's the media now when you need it? Well, a few snippets from Biden's withdrawal announcement when he threw in the towel and said, I'm not going to run. I'm not going to run just yet, though, because where is he now? But I quote, and these are a few snippets. In my zeal to rekindle that idealism, I made some mistakes, but now the exaggerated shadow of this mistake has begun to obscure the essence of my candidacy and the essence of Joe Biden. Sounds like poetry, right?
Essence of Joe Biden.
The essence.
Sounds like a perfume.
Effervescence, right? Well,
I think
Biden.
that's why he's sniffing all around all the time, right? Joe
That's
Biden.
a good one.
Essence.
That's a good one. So here's another part of his speech. He said he chose between running for president or doing his job to stop Reagan's effort to reshape the Supreme Court. That there will be other opportunities to campaign for president, but there will be no other opportunities to influence Reagan's choice for the Supreme Court. That was Joe Biden when he dropped out of the race. So really, with that kind of history, Dr. Tom, one would think the media would have been all over this like they were years ago for the presidential election. But as you said before, not so much. Nope. The media, they could have branded Joe Biden as a cheater, as a plagiarizer, as a liar.
As a fraud.
Yeah, fraud. That's the word. Hashtag fraud. But they decided to give him a pass. So what happened to the media all those years, all those decades from then to now? Well, back then, they covered important issues, important topics about the candidates, but now they don't. They just don't do it. They ignore the problems with Democrats, but they escalate and highlight any problems or issues where a Republican candidate is concerned. And speaking of ignoring issues, Dr. Tom, the media ignored the New York Post story on the laptop from hell. That's or right. Laptops. I think there's more than one. Hunter Biden's laptop. And Miranda Devine she's been all over the Hunter Biden and the laptops and the Biden Inc. She's been all over it. So we applaud her for her efforts. But the media totally ignored it in October of 2020, Dr. Tom.
Yeah, think about a story that was the story or potentially the most important story, and they swept it under the rug. It was a bombshell story, and they did nothing with it. They just swept it under the rug. And what's interesting is former CNN head Jeff Zucker said the network didn't report on Hunter Biden's laptop because he wasn't the candidate.
You can't even say that without laughing. Seriously?
He wasn't the candidate.
Wow.
Wasn't the candidate. So there was no need from CNN at the time to report on it.
Nothing to see here.
No need. Right.
Wow.
Here's another one. Here's the quote. But first, with regard to the son of the candidate, he was the son of the candidate. He wasn't the candidate.
The mix on words, huh?
Right. Son, it's like King Kong, then you had Son of Kong.
Right.
Now we have, he's the son of the candidate, so it doesn't matter. Even though the laptop had implicated Joe Biden in these business deals and influence peddling. No, don't worry about that.
Right.
But Zucker and CNN wasn't the only one who's trying to defend their decision not to report on the Hunter Biden laptop. MSNBC chief Phil Griffin said they didn't report on it because Hunter, drumroll, was never arrested. Not the
Oh,
candidate, wasn't
never
arrested,
arrested,
so there's
right?
no there, only a laptop filled with data, filled with pictures that you
Yeah,
really don't want to see, and a
yeah.
lot of incriminating evidence of Biden Inc., the crime family, a lot of evidence.
Wow.
So, of course, there will always be a double standard. So imagine if Donald Trump's children, one of his
Yeah.
children, had a laptop from hell. Do you think Zucker would say, well, we're only interested in Donald Trump, not his kids?
I think
Yeah,
not. Yeah.
right. Would they
Well,
be care if he was arrested or not? No. But this is the way they operate. It's ridiculous, especially concerning the way they hammered, these news outlets hammered former President Trump over the alleged Russia collusion, of which there wasn't. How
right.
much ink and time and airspace did they focus on that?
Well, think about all of the mines that they, the mine meld thing.
Oh,
They
yeah.
just, it was just every day, all day long, Russia, 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 and more Russia.
Right. And they, again, the double standard, they were all over that, and they were
Yep.
wrong on that. But it doesn't matter because they take sides. There's a winning team and there's a losing team, and the vast majority of the media is on Team Democrat, and they will do anything to promote Democrats so they get elected.
Yep.
It's an agenda-driven media. Agenda-driven media, full stop. And then moving forward to the 22 election, that was background, we have the Pennsylvania race where John Fetterman beat Dr. Oz in Pennsylvania for that Senate seat. Well, we know Fetterman has health issues, and that's certainly one thing, but we don't even need to talk about that. What we need to address is Fetterman's outrageous left-wing, over-the-cliff views on crime and criminals. Keep in mind, crime is a huge issue across the United States, and especially in Philadelphia, which is located in Pennsylvania,
Yeah, it's
has a
horrible.
huge crime issue. So you would think the newspapers in Pennsylvania would be all over Fetterman, investigating what's his position on crime. And it's just shocking what Fetterman, what he's about. Fetterman helped release 10 convicts serving life sentences for murder because, as his role as the chair of the Pennsylvania Board of Pardons.
Wow.
Murderers released from jail. Fetterman, right? Here's from Fox News. Quote, in December, Fetterman voted to release Edward Silvis, who was convicted of first-degree murder in the 1969 killing of an elderly woman during an attempted robbery in her home. Democrat Governor Tom Wolf granted Silvis's request for clemency on February 15. Elderly woman murdered. Fetterman, you can get out of jail.
Wow.
Right? This isn't bingo. I mean, Monopoly. This isn't
Monopoly.
Monopoly, right? Get your get out of jail card. If you're in Fetterman's world, you do. So Fox News covered this story. And they mentioned a number of people that Fetterman gave the vote to release in his role as being part of the parole board. We're talking about murderers, right?
Yeah.
We're not talking about people taking candy from a candy store, right? Unbelievable. And just imagine if a Republican candidate had that record during high crime, right?
Anywhere
Dr.
close.
Oz had that record, right? No,
Yeah.
unbelievable. But it gets worse. Also, the Pennsylvania Board of Pardons had the Philadelphia lawyers for social equity. Now you know you're in good,
It's over.
parole board asked the Philadelphia lawyers for social equity to do a couple of reports, which they did. And they recommended that there should be a merit-based clemency for second-degree murderers. And they called on the state legislature to change a law that mandates life sentences without parole for second-degree murderers. So Fetterman, as his role as running this parole board, asked this, sounds like a left-wing group to me, social equity, signal, clue, to come up with recommendations on prison sentences, and they called to reduce the jail term or give parole to second-degree murderers. This is Fetterman. Again, nothing to do with this health issue. This has everything to do with his radical, over-the-top, over-the-cliff, left-wing policies during a time of high crime. Where was the media? That should have been front page news in every newspaper in Pennsylvania, and especially in Philadelphia.
Yeah, especially. Or across the country as well.
Right. I'm guessing that didn't happen. Every news broadcast should have opened with that.
Yes. And don't forget, this man has been elected. So, yeah, there's that. Well, Dr. Tom, it continues, actually. This is from the New York Post. In 2021, talking about the reports at a press conference, Fetterman said, the lives that are destroyed and the resources that are wasted due to Pennsylvania's statute, and that he hoped the report's finding would lead to a conversation that would free close to 1,200 people.
Lives that are destroyed. Did you hear that? We're talking about murderers. Whose lives got destroyed?
Right. It continues. In February 2021, Fetterman said, quote, my hope is there is a political will to abolish death by incarceration for second-degree murder here in Pennsylvania because it's a tragedy.
Death by incarceration.
Let
you mean
that
a life
sink
sentence
in.
for killing somebody?
What
about the people who were killed?
I know. And their family and their friends. I know. So the New York Post and Fox News cover Fetterman. What about the other outlets, like you were saying before, Dr. Tom? Wow. Well, given the state of crime in Philadelphia, Fetterman's position on criminals should have led the news coverage about his run for office all day long, but it didn't. News influences opinions of voters, but if there is no news, no one is educated, no one is informed, no one knows otherwise. And if you're only getting your news from one specific source and they weren't covering Fetterman, you don't know about this. This is crazy.
Yeah. The media are the enemy of the people. That's the headline. That's the headline. And this goes beyond candidates running for office like Oz and Fetterman. It also goes to policy issues. And this one, I saw this article while I was in bed waking up, and I just could not believe it. So policy issues. We all know that high gasoline prices and high diesel fuel prices are really important issues for American families as they struggle to make their budgets meet the cost of daily living with these high energy prices. So you would think stories about energy prices would be important for the election, important for the media to report on before the election.
Yes.
Silly me. Well, after the election, the New York Times and the Washington Post are now reporting on diesel fuel shortages. Now, and importantly, why the shortages are happening. These stories were published on November 10. November 10. Both stories, same day. So the New York Times, right, story, the price of diesel powers the economy is still climbing. New York Times. You know, when the New York Times writes something, it sets the news for a lot of other outlets across the country.
Right.
But now they're talking about diesel fuel shortages. Now, here's an important quote from the story that I pulled out. Quote, "The tightest market is in the Northeast, where oil refineries have closed in recent years and where the diesel crunch is complicated by winter demand for heating oil." You mean the winter, you're going to turn on your oil furnace? That's complicating? Anyway, it's just, drives me nuts. An energy analyst in the story, quote, "Because we shut those refineries down, we don't have enough capacity." Oh, if you don't have refineries, you don't have product, and then you have a shortage.
Right.
Huh. Does that mean you actually need refineries? Green New Deal Joe Biden? Do you think the voters would like to know that one of the reasons why they have high home heating fuel prices is because there's not enough refineries? Do you think that would be important to know before the election?
Just a little.
You'd think.
So yeah, fewer refineries, lower supply, higher prices, and it harms everyone, businesses, households, you name it, higher prices for goods at the grocery store. And we're already seeing high prices at the grocery store. This is from Washington Post, Dr. Tom. U.S. diesel shortage squeezes farmers, homeowners, and White House.
Look at that title. This is after the election.
Totally.
The White House is actually mentioned.
Right. Why? But okay. Here's a quote. "Diesel is a workhorse of the economy, helping power most major industries. Companies rely on it to deliver their goods by truck, rail, and ship, and nearly 1 in 5 homes in the Northeast use diesel for heating oil. The challenge is compounded by the closing of older refineries in the United States in recent years, which has reduced the amount of diesel made here by 1 million barrels per day, or about 6%. It continues, "New refineries are unlikely to take their place, industry officials say. Building and running such infrastructure is expensive and typically only profitable if it operates for decades. Investors are wary of such projects at a time when the nation is transitioning away from fossil fuels." Well, we're getting our arms and legs twisted to transition, as they say, from fossil fuels. Right. But I mean, really, this is like,
I gotta go back to that opening paragraph because this is the absolute truth from the Washington Post. Diesel is the workhorse of the economy. I didn't hear solar panels. I didn't hear wind turbines.
Right.
Did you hear that? No. Diesel is the workhorse of the economy.
Right. Well, go ahead.
I mean, come on.
I can't.
This is all after the fact. In other words, the Green New Deal is a failure. Biden is turning us into a third world nation with energy shortages. Yeah, that's the headline. These people know this. This is not rocket science. This is not rocket science. They know it. And after the election, they come out with the truth.
I don't even know where to begin. But the conclusion here, Dr. Tom, is Biden's war against traditional forms of energy is responsible for not building new refineries. And you got to keep in mind, I mean, our refineries are really old across the country, and some of them have to come offline for different reasons. It could be an act of nature. It could be for maintenance and repairs, just routine maintenance, or when they switch the blends of, whatever the product is for the summer or winter. I mean, there's a number of reasons. A certain number are online, offline, and during the pandemic, some of them did go offline because demand was low, and then some did not come back. Some of them did not open back up again. So that
and there's no incentive to build a new one because Biden just said the last week of the election, he said no drilling.
Right.
So if you're going to invest multi-million dollars to invest in a refinery, when Biden and the Green New Deal advocates have a war against that type of fuel, ain't happening. The result is Biden's policies are resulting in this energy shortage. And all of this is coming out after the election. So we've talked about the New York Times, we talked about the Washington Post. Who's missing? The Wall Street Journal. Here's their story after the election. Quote, the U.S. electric system is leaning on customers to avoid blackouts. Leaning on customers to avoid blackouts.
Okay.
The story discusses that under extreme weather conditions, i.e. winter, utilities will ask their customers to cut down on power usage.
Can you imagine?
But
we're living in this day and age. Can you imagine?
We're a third world nation. But here's the interesting. Why? Well, some areas don't have enough power because coal plants are closed and are closing. Here's the quote. Construction of new infrastructure for power generation and transmission isn't keeping pace with the trend of electrifying everything from stovetops to transportation. We don't have enough energy supply, and yet it's telling everybody to go buy an electric vehicle.
Right.
How's that going to work? Again, this is not rocket science. This is just
connect the dot. Connect the dot.
And here I think is the best quote from this story. Quote, renewables like wind and solar, which are intermittent unless paired with large batteries, may not be sufficient to offset the closures of traditional plants, grid operators have warned. Translation, you shut down the coal plants, you dial down some of the nuclear plants, you're totally reliant increasingly on renewable energy, and it can't deliver the power.
Right,
so
not even close.
What do you got to do is when it's going to be a weather condition, the utility is going to ask you to turn down the heat, turn off the TV, turn off the computers, because there's not enough energy.
Well, you say they're going to ask you, but there was a situation where if you have a certain thermostat, I think it's a smart thermostat, and
I think that was in Colorado. Or Denver,
Yep. And, they're able to know where you have your temperature set at, and they changed it. People were seeing their thermometers, go up or down or whatever the situation was. They had no control over it.
It's just, I don't know why I'm laughing. I should be crying.
It's crazy.
So
they're going to ask you, but no, we're just going to do it.
They're ringing the doorbell. They're going to pull a plug.
Right.
Here's another one. This is another one. This is just shocking. Quote, Americans aren't used to thinking about whether electricity is available. Damn right. I'm not used to thinking whether electricity is available.
Can you imagine?
After years of relatively cheap and reliable energy. Translation, the years of cheap and reliable electricity are over.
Yeah. Electricity and gasoline.
We're not used to that. That's right, because we're in the United States of America. We're not used to power shortages. Again, that's for third world nations. Oh, no. we're joining that group real quick, and Americans just have to adjust. You now have to adjust just because when you flick the switch, the electricity may not be there. So just get used to it. Unbelievable.
It's going to be a crapshoot. Flip the switch, it might come on, it might not come on, or who knows how long it will be on.
Right.
This is where we're heading.
Look, all three of these stories point to the Green New Deal as being a miserable failure for the American people.
Yeah.
Whether it's home heating oil, whether it's the same thing as diesel transporting goods and services, goods through trucks, or whether it's electricity. The Green New Deal is creating energy shortages and making us a third world nation. But yet, the media is now reporting on this after the election.
After. And keep in mind, the elites can afford energy at any cost, at any price. They are the ones who are pushing this Green New Deal agenda. They don't care about the consequences, and they don't care that American households will be suffering the consequences of their nonsense, because just everything you just laid out, Dr. Tom, renewable sources of energy, and we say do it all, folks, do it all, but don't force it upon Americans. Don't force it upon us. It's not reliable and it's more costly. So another example of the election outcome, Dr. Tom, it turns out young voters turned out for Democrats in a big way. At Arizona State, it turns out around 96% of the voters in college voted Democrat. So you had these a huge number of young voters who are voting Democrat. Now, this is from the New York Post. 27% of eligible voters age 18 to 29 cast ballots. 63% of those votes per exit polls went for Democrats. John Fetterman claimed 70% of the youth vote in his Pennsylvania Senate race. Arizona's Mark Kelly claimed 76%. Those are big numbers of the youth vote going to Democrats, Dr. Tom. Looks like the bottom line here is that the student loan vote buying scheme worked. Dr. Tom, what do you think?
You think? You can imagine what the Democrats were saying on campus. Vote for Biden and you won't have to pay your student loan.
Right. You can come here for free. Well, the problem for Gen Z, a judge struck down Biden's $500 billion student loan relief plan days after the election. So the Gen Z were suckers, essentially, Dr. Tom. But of course, the media, we're all going back to the media here, folks. They could have been all over Biden's vote buying scheme and informed the nation that the president's effort was on extremely shaky legal ground and would very likely get tossed. But here's another thing, Dr. Tom. It's reported the youth vote turnout was the second highest in 30 years for a midterm. I mean, that's staggering. And unfortunately, a lot of them voted Democrat because they're not connecting those dots. Right. Remember, go back to connecting the dots. The Democrats also had a huge ground game, especially on college campuses. So that was the word on the street, vote Democrat. And they also have deep pockets, the Democrats, Dr. Tom.
Yeah, it seems almost endless deep pockets, endless.
Yeah.
But, I think we could have entitled this episode, They Think You're Stupid. Gen Z, the Democrats think you're stupid. And oh, by the way, you are. You fell for that trap. You voted for them thinking you get free stuff. There's no free stuff. Sorry.
College isn't working, huh?
Sorry. But then again, this is all the media's fault because the media knew from the very beginning Biden is a fraud. If he's a fraud, he would lie about anything, including debt relief for students. Right? But they couldn't connect that dot. Look, bottom line, the media are the enemy of the people.
Sure.
They are playing an advocacy role. They are on Team Democrat. They will wait to report news after elections. Before elections, they will hammer Republicans. Before elections, they will hide the candidates' positions like Fetterman's. And that the end result is we end up with a lousy midterm election result. At this point, as we speak, it's still possible Republicans will control the House, but there's an outside chance the Democrats might. And in our assessment, we think the media owns a lot of this. Again, because they are the enemy of the people. And that's why we hope you share this podcast around so that we can help educate you, your friends, and your family. Because you're not going to find this kind of content in everyday news media. You're just not going to find it.
Indeed, Dr. Tom. Well, folks, thanks for checking out Reigniting Liberty. And remember, everyone has a role to play. What are you doing for liberty? Until next time.